Hi, this is Tom Muro with World Class Coaching, and this week I want to go over the strengths and weaknesses in the 4-3-3 system using the Planet Training Session Designer software. And I want to go over this just to kind of give an overview of what I think the real strong points of the 4-3-3 are, as well as the things that you have to be aware of as weaknesses if you're going to use this system or if you're going to play against it. The first strength, really, in my opinion, is the fact that you've got this front five that allow for a lot of mobility and a lot of interchanging of positions in order to make it really difficult for the defenders to adjust and adapt to the positioning of players. So if a player has the ball on the inside here in this attacking this right midfielder, attacking midfielder position, we'll call him a number 10, for example, or number 8, then having this player be able to move with the ball and take that ball to the outside, right, creating space perhaps for a player to underlap or make those runs inside and pull the defense apart. Likewise, you can have players running from the outside with the ball and running inside, allowing for that number 10 to overlap on the outside. So you're creating movement and space and the interchange of positions so that when the ball is passed, it's easy then for players to have movement and still, as your team moves up the field, still maintain balance and still maintain support for the ball, but with that movement, making it really difficult for defenders to track players and to get in good defensive positions because players are constantly moving around. Obviously, you can do that on both sides. You can have defensive midfielders getting more involved in the attack as well, creating that sixth player. Obviously, we'll also talk about moving the fullbacks up as another huge strength, because when you've got the fullbacks attacking and then you're basically holding with 3 in the middle, then you're attacking with everybody else is getting forward, and you're able to attack with 7 if you want to play it very aggressively, perhaps like Klopp does with Liverpool. And you can always be a little bit more defensive and just have perhaps the ball side defender getting forward, that outside back getting forward in support of the play. So you're still getting 6 players forward with the ball. So the numbers that you can get forward and the fact that you can have them overlapping and underlapping and making inside runs and pulling the defense apart to make it really difficult for the defense to adjust is a huge strength of playing with the 4-3-3. Another strength of the 4-3-3 is on the defensive side, because the natural shape of this formation, and we'll just pull a defender or an opponent, I should say, in here. So if an opponent has the ball, now we're in a position to create lots of triangles of pressure on the ball that are going to make it very difficult for the other team to penetrate and to get into the space behind us. So, here we've got the forward being, the striker, the number 9, being the first pressuring player. And then we've got the number 8 and the number 10 coming up to make it very difficult to penetrate. Obviously, everybody else would be pushing up with the ball that high up the field as well. And so, we've got that middle diamond or triangle that makes it very difficult. And then if the ball goes wide to a player, so say, this was an outside back with the ball, then we're able to get a lot of pressure on that outside back with the winger, in this case, the number 11 getting forward here to pressure. And then we've got the outside back that's able to give support, and the number 8 in this case giving support. So again, we've got good triangles of pressure, making it really difficult for the other team to penetrate us. So, using those triangles of pressure and having that pressure and cover, and in some cases, a balance, even though over a short distance with those triangles, is still a really powerful way to make it difficult for other teams to penetrate. Now, one of the huge advantages in playing with a 4-3-3 is obviously your 3-man midfield. And it's going to be very easy for a 3-man midfield to deal with, let's say we'll put 2. If they're playing a 4-4-2 with a flat midfield, then it's going to be very easy for our midfield 3 to not only keep possession of the ball by playing, you're playing 3 versus 2 here with the opportunity to play supporting players on the outside. But even if we're just talking about that midfield 3, it's going to be tough if the other team has possession for them to penetrate, because again, we've got these triangles of pressure that's going to make it difficult for that midfield 2 in a flat 4-4-2 formation to penetrate, or any formation really that's using 2 central midfielders going to play against 3 central midfielders. Obviously a huge advantage, goes to the team with the 3 in the midfield. Now, with every system, you're going to have strengths and you're going to have weaknesses. So those are the strengths of the system. The weaknesses, and the first thing I think of is, do I have players that are technical enough to keep possession using this formation? Because the idea is to build and then get forward. And if we're not able to have that kind of technical player that's able to keep the ball, it's going to be difficult to play this system because players are more isolated in terms of their space around the field. And so if we're not able to keep the ball and then find teammates to keep possession, it's going to be difficult. Also, if we're going to play a pressing style, going back to Klopp's way of playing with Liverpool, if we're going to play a high press, then it's going to be necessary for these players to also be very well-conditioned, very physically gifted as well, in order to get the pressure on the ball that we need all around the field to put the other team under pressure. So having technical players, having well-conditioned players is huge. Now, just the weaknesses in the formation is just by having these two wingers and having your number 7 and your number 11 playing very high, now we're exposing these outside backs and we're exposing the space between the wide strikers and the wide defenders in this area. That's obviously a huge danger that you have to deal with. And it's the first thing defensively that I always look at as the weakness is how we're going to deal with that. Are we going to either ask our attacking players to cover this space, or are we going to roll up our outside backs and ask our defenders to slide in order to cover the space? I prefer to have the outside backs slide up, or roll up is what I'll call it with my players. So if we're rolling up on the outside, now we've got to have the other players sliding over to maintain, a good defensive line. In this case, basically now we're a back 3. But doing that takes the pressure off of these wide attacking players and takes the pressure off their defensive roles so that they can focus on putting pressure on the other team's back 4 and then being available as options when we do press and win the ball, and then we can get forward quickly to those players on the outside. So that's how I choose to do, to deal with that space on the outside. Another weakness here is if the opponent is able to bypass those front 3 or even those front 5 with longer passes. So if they're able to play balls in behind those front 5, now we're only defending with 4. So if they're able to break this press up front and in the midfield with these attacking players, if they're able to get behind us, now we're going to have problems playing against 4-4-2, for example, where we've got our 2 center backs are occupied with strikers, and we've got players getting up from midfield positions on the outside to press our defenders, our outside defenders. That's going to make it difficult. So a team playing very direct, it's going to be important that we win these balls in the air. We prevent the ball being played long in the first place, by making sure we're confronting these players and not letting them play long and early and getting in behind us. So that's really important. Another thing is if we're not able to keep our compactness, and when we lose the ball, so when we turn over possession, if we have players that are isolated and either really far forward in this case, but in any case, just not compact, then that's going to expose big spaces that can be exploited by the other team if we're overly stretched when we lose the ball. And that's why I think it's important too to be able to press right away. Pressing right away slows down the attack and allows us time to get compact. Another thing that is a weakness, if you're playing against a team that's playing a 4-4-2, if they decide to play instead of playing a flat 2 in the midfield, if they decide to play a diamond in the midfield, now we're overwhelmed by their 4 players in the midfield area, and our 3 are having to deal with playing against 4 players. So if they're playing this as more of a tight diamond in their midfield, and they've got their fullbacks are getting forward, so they're basically playing a 4-4-2 again, but a more narrow 4-4-2 in the midfield area, that's going to cause our midfield 3 problems. So we're going to have to deal with that by asking extra work from either strikers coming back, or we're going to have to pass on midfield players, and that's going to be difficult because they've already got 2 players to deal with, 2 strikers to deal with. So, being overwhelmed here in the middle, that can definitely be a challenge. Another thing that they can do to make it difficult for us is to try to stop our number 6 from dictating play. If we're not able to get our holding midfield holding midfield player involved and make sure that they're on the ball a lot and they're able to switch play and dictate play. If they're able to get pressure on them with, say that, they're playing that 4-4-2, and we'll just add players here. So if they're playing that and they've got the two, they've got the diamond in the midfield and the two up top, that's going to make it difficult on our number 6 because there's a lot of pressure here around these areas. So it's going to be tougher for them to get on the ball. So those are weaknesses that you have to consider. Obviously, every formation has strengths and weaknesses. I like the 4-3-3 because of its flexibility and different ways that you can play it and really transition this into a 4-2-3-1, for example. You can even go 4-5-1 if you want to be more defensive and pull those outside strikers back. So there's lots you can do with this. This is just a quick overview of some of the basic strengths and weaknesses. So I hope this helps explain this formation. If you have comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Thanks a lot.